Hi everybody, Professor Wills here. Welcome to our semester. I thought we'd open up our discussion this week with an exploration of the word art. How has it been defined in the dictionary? What do we think of that definition? Does it apply to art? Does it really fit? I think by the end of the semester, or maybe even with a few weeks of lecture under your belt, you'll come to agree with me that perhaps that dictionary definition doesn't quite define art broadly enough. It's relatively limited in its definition. It doesn't really encapsulate the whole scope of art made across the globe, past, present, and future. So I'm going to pivot to our PowerPoint here, and we will continue to explore that definition and that concept. All right, there we go. The Oxford Dictionary definition for what is art. Art, the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. So it's true there are countless examples of beauty showcased in art, even going back to ancient times. A famous example is this portrait that you see on the upper left, portrait bust. It's a sculpture of the Egyptian queen Nefertiti, whose name literally translates to the beautiful one. That goes back quite a ways to the 14th century BCE. Another icon of beauty, I guess you could say, of male beauty would be Michelangelo's marble statue of David. That you see on the bottom right here. That dates from the 16th century, just about 500 years ago, and kind of epitomizes the ideals of describing the human body in its sort of most perfect, heroic state. The emotional power is another aspect of art history. And so some of you may recognize the artwork on the bottom left by Edvard Munch, created in 1893. It's called The Scream. I know it's thrown up a lot on social media. There are a lot of riffs on it, but it does convey an intense feeling of emotion. So that connects also to this dictionary definition: emotional art, conveying beauty. And then you have a quote from antiquity, from the world of the ancient Romans. And there was a guy named Seneca in the 1st century, a philosopher, who is known to have said that all art is but imitation of nature. And it's often been considered that nature's, its highest form of beauty should be immortalized through art. And one can see that perhaps in this 17th century Chinese Ming Dynasty era painting in ink on silk. Or again, if you want to say the imitation of nature in the idealized physique of Michelangelo's David, one can say that is an imitation of the human body, which is a product of nature as well. But at the same time, I would disagree with Seneca, and I would say that the Oxford Dictionary definition is limited as well. So let me explain why I think that. So if we say art is an imitation of nature, I would argue, well, there's art that manipulates nature. And so an example would be this, what they call the serpent mound in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. It's an example of native indigenous North American art that you can find in Ohio, dating from the years 900 to 1300. It's creating earthen mounds to create a serpentine shape here for mysterious reasons. Pardon me. So that wouldn't necessarily imitate nature. It's manipulating nature. How about art that doesn't seem conventional in describing beauty or functionality? We have an example on the bottom left from Merit Oppenheim, a female surrealist artist. The surrealists enjoyed toying with rational interpretations of the world, kind of manipulating hard forms and turning them into soft forms. And so here she is playing with a traditional kind of teacup and saucer with a spoon and has them covered in fur to kind of really disrupt the interpretation of an everyday object in our lives. So is that still an object of beauty? I guess we'd have to have a debate about that. On the upper right, we have an Nkizi figure from the Congo region of Central Africa from the latter half of the 19th century. This is an example of sculpture not made to exhibit beauty like Michelangelo's David, but one that is meant to be created to be a ritual object. So it had a practical purpose. Purpose wasn't to create beauty or to imitate nature. It had a ritualistic function used by a shaman, using nails as a way of interceding between the living and the supernatural. Finally, on the bottom right, you can see a cube-shaped sculpture by female sculptor Eva Hesse. Accession number 2 from 1968 is made from galvanized steel and vinyl. It's about 30 inches in height. And it's part of the process art movement, where making the art is more important than any kind of, and showing how it's made, the ingredients, is more important than any kind of concept or message that the artist might be trying to convey. So again, looking at it, it looks like a cube filled full of menacing looking pins or nails. It's actually rubber tubing, but it's evocative of kind of an organic beast, like a sea anemone. But it defies any kind of category of representing beauty or imitating nature, at least directly. So all of these are examples where that kind of, those definitions, those limited definitions of imitating nature, describing beauty, aren't necessarily true in art history. And that's something we'll talk about in this class. But does the existence of art require a human relationship with an audience to exist? It's kind of like the saying, if a tree falls down in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is yes and no. For art can exist, but its meaning to human history only exists if it connects to us, right? We're the creatures who value art. And so in a way, the relationship between at least one of us has to exist to be considered art. Moving on to the next slide here. So for instance, an interesting case study would be this art, very ancient art from the Paleolithic era of the Stone Age, where an abundance of murals are found in caves in multiple sites, not only in Africa and Indonesia, but in Europe as well, where we are now. And so this was a tradition for multiple generations of Stone Age peoples for millennia to contribute to the walls of these cave sites. And then at some point that went away, and it was only rediscovered in the 19th century, these incredible caves. So it had such meaning and relevance for mysterious reasons for these ancient peoples to come back generation after generation to contribute to these cave walls. And then for some reason that fell away and became not an important thing to do. So again, that human connection to the art form waned. But the miracle of its discovery made it a body of art that is of complete fascination to the modern world. So that audience returned to appreciate that art form. So the concept of beauty is one that's fun to talk about as well. So like a Tinder profile pic, right? We find ourselves drawn to something that's attractive, that we like to get to know and spend more time with, making us better people for having known them. Here's a smattering of art that's been considered full of people who have endeavored to be attractive or rendered attractive by their artists, such as this painting by Renoir, an example of French Impressionism of, you know, the fashionable gathering on a summer day around a beautiful table for lunch. The iconic Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci, a famous beauty of Renaissance art history. Always attracts a crowd, like a modern day celebrity. And then we have a sculpture of a famous Mayan king who we'll talk about this semester, actually went through some manipulation to improve his looks. And we'll talk about what that is to create the Mayan version of beauty. So beauty then and now. So that jives with, you know, some art representing beauty. But then you can have art where defining it isn't as easy a thing to do. It can be different. It can be challenging. Is there a representation of beauty? Is there a challenge of the gaze towards objects of beauty? Are things meant to be disturbing or odd? That is a body of art that's out there as well, where artists don't feel an agenda to serve beauty or to imitate nature. Artists try to challenge and engage an audience in new and innovative ways. So overall, defining art isn't an easy thing to do, and that's a good thing, because creativity and what defines art shouldn't have a closed definition. Art should continue to evolve and expand, even beyond the many art historical styles and isms that we know today. And so I'm wrapping up with this fun image from pre-COVID times where there was a huge art show in Miami. And so one gallery featured the work of an artist from Italy who simply taped a banana with duct tape to the wall and sold it for $120,000. So we'll work in a little discussion of the wacky world of the art market this semester as well. All right, talk to you soon.